For decades, the Roswell incident has been relegated to the realm of conspiracy theories, a whispered tale of a crashed flying saucer and a government cover-up. But what if tangible evidence existed, locked away for 3/4 of a century, waiting to rewrite history? It begins with a photo, an unassuming image, seemingly lost to time, yet brimming with secrets that sent chills down the spines of historians and ufologists alike. Our story starts not in the dusty plains of New Mexico, but in an attic in suburban Ohio. Sarah, clearing out her late grandmother's estate, stumbled upon a box labeled simply, "Dad's Stuff." Inside, nestled among old military documents and faded photographs, was a sealed manila envelope. It was addressed in stark, typed letters to Lieutenant John H. McKinley and marked with the insignia of the Roswell Army Airfield. Intrigued, Sarah carefully opened the envelope, revealing a single black-and-white photograph. At first glance, the photo appeared unremarkable, a group of men in military uniforms standing in a barren desert landscape. Scattered around them were pieces of metallic debris, reflecting the harsh New Mexico sun. But as Sarah examined the image more closely, a sense of unease began to creep in. The debris didn't look like anything she recognized. It wasn't the crumpled foil of a weather balloon. The metal was thin, almost iridescent, and strangely contorted. There were symbols on one of the pieces. Compelled by the unsettling image, Sarah posted it on an online forum dedicated to the Roswell incident. Within hours, the forum exploded with activity. Seasoned researchers and amateur sleuths alike pored over the photograph, dissecting every detail with forensic precision. The initial reactions were a mix of excitement and skepticism. Could this be the genuine article, a piece of photographic evidence that had eluded the public for decades? Or was it just another elaborate hoax, cleverly designed to exploit the enduring fascination with Roswell? The debate raged, but as more experts weighed in, a consensus began to emerge. This photograph was unlike anything seen before. The image was incredibly detailed, showing the New Mexico desert landscape clearly. The date was faintly visible on the back, revealing it was a first-generation print. Developed shortly after the alleged crash in July 1947. This wasn't some cheap reproduction or a hastily photoshopped creation. This was the real deal. But what made this photo so compelling? What details sent shivers down the spines of seasoned researchers and ignited a firestorm of speculation? It wasn't just the debris. It was the sheer incongruity of it all. The men in the photo weren't posing for a staged publicity shot. They were clearly examining something extraordinary. And while the Roswell Army Airfield initially attributed the crash to a weather balloon, this debris didn't fit that explanation. The metal scraps appeared too light, too strong, and too alien. One researcher, Dr. Emily Carter, a historian specializing in Cold War-era military photography, immediately recognized the significance of the image. "The photographic quality is exceptional for its time," she explained. This wasn't a casual snapshot. This was taken by a professional, likely someone within the military, documenting something of considerable importance. Dr. Carter's initial analysis focused on the technical aspects of the photograph. She noted the type of film used, the printing process, and the subtle details that suggested authenticity. But it was the content of the image that truly captivated her. "The debris is the key," she stated. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The way it reflects the light, the strange texture. It's not consistent with conventional materials." Another analyst, a materials scientist named Mark Reynolds, concurred with Dr. Carter's assessment. "The metal appears to have some sort of memory effect," he observed. "It's bent and twisted, but it seems to be trying to return to its original shape. That's not something you'd expect to see with ordinary aluminum or tin." And then there were the markings, tiny geometric symbols etched onto one of the metal fragments. They weren't English letters, numbers, or any recognizable form of earthly writing. They were something else entirely. Linguists, cryptographers, and even art historians weighed in, attempting to decipher the mysterious symbols. Some speculated that they were a form of alien language, while others suggested they were merely decorative markings. But no one could definitively identify their origin or purpose. As the initial analysis progressed, a sense of urgency began to pervade the research community. This photograph wasn't just another piece of Roswell lore. It was a potential game changer, a tangible piece of evidence that could finally unravel the mystery surrounding the 1947 incident. But the photograph also raised unsettling questions. Why had it remained hidden for so long? Why had Lieutenant John H. McKinley kept it secret? And what did it truly reveal about what happened in the New Mexico desert that fateful summer? With the photo undergoing rigorous testing and a deeper examination of the people involved, its authenticity will begin to be unraveled. But first, what exactly do these men know, and why have they been silent about the truth for so long? The answers may finally bring about the explanation to Roswell. The discovery of the photo immediately forced us to confront a series of unsettling anomalies, strange contradictions that seemed to unravel the official narrative of the Roswell incident piece by piece. To fully grasp the significance of the photograph, it's crucial to dissect these anomalies, focusing primarily on three key elements: the ambiguous figure positioned within the frame, the peculiar nature of the debris scattered across the desert floor, and a mysterious handwritten note scrawled along the photograph's edge. Each element, upon closer inspection, presents significant challenges to the long-standing explanations offered by the Air Force. First, let's turn our attention to the figure. At first glance, it appears to be just another member of the cleanup crew, another soldier tasked with the grim duty of collecting wreckage in the New Mexico desert. But the deeper we delve, the more apparent it becomes that this individual deviates significantly from the standard military personnel present at the scene. Consider their attire. While other soldiers are clad in identifiable uniforms, complete with insignia and visible rank, this figure wears a plain, unadorned tunic. There's a distinct absence of any identifying markers or emblems. This lack of insignia raises immediate questions. Who is this individual? What role do they play in this operation? Are they even military personnel? The figure's boots also present a notable anomaly. Unlike the laced leather boots worn by the other soldiers, these boots appear seamless, almost molded, with a finish that suggests a synthetic or advanced material far removed from the standard military issue of the time. Then, there are the hands, noticeably elongated, with fingers that seem disproportionately long compared to the other figures in the photograph. The hands lack the calloused, worn appearance one might expect from someone engaged in manual labor. They hang limply at the figure's sides, adding to an overall sense of otherness. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this figure is their face, or rather, the lack thereof. Shrouded in shadow, beneath the brim of what appears to be a cap, the facial features are difficult to discern. However, when enhanced and analyzed, subtle but significant deviations from human proportions emerge. The head appears too large for the shoulders, creating an unsettling imbalance. The eyes, if one can even call them that, are unusually wide and tilted, reflecting light in a manner that suggests a glossy, almost unnatural surface. Crucially, there's a complete absence of a discernible nose bridge. Just a flat plane, and the mouth is reduced to a faint, barely perceptible line. This is not mere shadow or photographic distortion. There's an underlying structure here that defies conventional human anatomy. When compared with countless witness accounts from the Roswell incident, detailing little bodies with oversized heads and large, dark eyes, the similarities become almost impossible to ignore. Here, captured on film dated July 1947, is a figure whose features eerily mirror those long-contested testimonies. Is this a coincidence? Or is it a visual validation of claims dismissed for decades as fanciful or fabricated? It's a question that has sent shivers down the spines of historians, forcing them to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about Roswell. Beyond the figure, the debris itself presents a series of inexplicable anomalies. If this was indeed the wreckage of a weather balloon, as the Air Force claimed, then why does it behave in such a peculiar manner? The metallic fragments scattered across the desert floor are particularly perplexing. Described as thin, almost gossamer-like, the metal nonetheless exhibits an unusual resilience. Its edges, instead of fraying or splitting as one might expect from conventional aluminum foil, curl back inward, displaying an almost elastic property. This memory metal, as it's been dubbed by some, echoes the descriptions provided by numerous Roswell witnesses, including Major Jesse Marcel, who spoke of handling materials that weighed next to nothing, yet could not be dented or torn. Is this photograph tangible proof of the existence of such extraordinary materials? The existence of such extraordinary materials. The lattice-like rods found amongst the debris are equally puzzling. The official explanation points to balsa wood, a lightweight material commonly used in balloon construction. However, a closer examination reveals that these rods possess a unique, fibrous sheen, lacking the porous structure of balsa. Their cross-section shows no discernible grain lines, suggesting a composition far removed from natural wood. Instead, they appear to be engineered, perhaps woven from mineral strands bound together by a resin-like substance. This level of sophistication is hardly consistent with the rudimentary materials typically found in weather balloons of the 1940s, but the most intriguing element of the debris is undoubtedly the presence of geometric markings. Upon magnification, these markings, barely visible to the naked eye, reveal a series of angular shapes repeating in a rhythmic pattern. These are not scratches or random imperfections. They're precise, deliberate, symbols that defy easy categorization. Could these markings be some form of extraterrestrial writing or insignia? It's a tantalizing possibility that has ignited the imaginations of researchers and historians alike. Finally, there's the handwritten note, a seemingly insignificant detail that may hold the key to unlocking the entire Roswell mystery. Scrawled along the edge of the photograph in hurried pencil strokes are the words, "Saucer Debris, RAF 1947. These words, seemingly innocuous, carry immense significance. The fact that they were written in pencil and appear to have sunk into the paper fibers shortly after it was processed indicates they were written close to the time the photo was taken. The term saucer debris is particularly revealing. This language directly contradicts the sanitized terms used by the military in later explanations. At the time, it echoed an early press release that spoke of finding a flying disc or saucer. If the cover-up narrative is to be believed, such terminology would have been strictly avoided. Instead, we find it scrawled alongside the wreckage, a clear indication that at least one individual present at the scene believed they were dealing with something extraordinary. This detail alone has significant implications for our understanding of the Roswell incident. It reinforces the idea that the initial reports were far more accurate than the later explanations, suggesting a deliberate attempt to downplay the truth. It presents significant challenges to the prevailing narrative. When taken together, these anomalies create a compelling argument that the Roswell incident was far more complex than the official story suggests. The figure, the debris, and the handwritten note challenge the long-standing explanations provided by the Air Force, forcing us to confront the possibility that something truly extraordinary occurred in the New Mexico desert in the summer of 1947. The photo was shocking. The figure was unnerving. The debris was inexplicable. But to Claire Ames, none of it felt as heavy as the memory of her grandfather's words, spoken more than once when she was a child. If you ever find the picture, don't keep it. Burn it. At the time, she had laughed it off, chalking it up to one of his strange old man quirks. But now, with the envelope slit open and the image laid bare on a light table, those words carried a new, terrifying clarity. Her grandfather, Thomas Ames, had served at Roswell Army Airfield in 1947. Officially, his file listed him as a supply clerk, a man responsible for ordering parts, tracking requisitions, and filing paperwork. Nothing glamorous, nothing secret. And yet, tucked behind his discharge papers, Claire found letters written decades later in shaky cursive, hinting at a burden he could never set down. One line read, "The picture is real. They told us to destroy all copies. I kept one. That was my mistake." Historians know that in the weeks after Roswell, unusual orders circulated through the base. Records from 1947, whole months of logs, vanished without explanation. Enlisted men later testified they were told to keep silent under threat of court-martial or worse. And here was Thomas confirming it in his own hand. He admitted to disobeying orders, hiding away one print before the purge. He also confessed to living in quiet fear that someone someday might discover he had it. The warning wasn't just about secrecy, it was about danger. "This isn't ours to show," he wrote in another note. It doesn't belong to us. They'll come looking if it surfaces. Who they were, he never said. Military investigators? Government agents? Or something not entirely human? The ambiguity was deliberate, and it haunted Claire as she read. At the Historical Society, the argument went on about whether Thomas's fear was a function of age or whatever other people understood as overwhelming pressure, the same as many Roswell witnesses had described. Suddenly, rancher Mac Brazel ended up locked in a room for days, under pressure to retract his story about visiting a UFO. It seemed an awful lot less like mythology and pretty convincing evidence. The secrets were not accidental. They were enforced, and Thomas had locked himself into the crosshairs of a truth nobody was supposed to possess by keeping that photo. Even the family itself remembered these odd shadows of that fear. Claire's father recalled some strange visits in the 1950s, two men in suits taking vague questions at the house about Thomas's service. You simply shushed him whenever he asked about it, saying, "Your father accomplished something incredibly brave once, and now just don't ever talk about it." That silence lasted until Thomas died, at which point all of it was put away into storage, and the secret lay dormant until Claire lifted the lid. The whistleblower's warning put a new spin on everything. This was no simple historical anomaly. It was contraband, evidence that someone at Roswell Army Airfield had gone against the script. Thomas knew the danger, and that was why he asked his family to destroy it. By not destroying it, by sealing it in wax for 75 years, he made sure that the story would one day come back to light. The eerie part? Not quite. If you find it, tell no one. Instead, burn it. Burn it entirely. As if even merely possessing the image carried some implication that transcended embarrassment, transcended conspiracy. As if the photo itself were some manifestation of danger, either for what it openly articulated, or perhaps for what it still unconsciously conjures. And if Thomas's warnings were right, then Claire's discovery was only the beginning. Because if he was silenced by fear for 75 years, who else had hidden pieces of the same story, and what might surface next when others begin to look? Eyes that weren't human. The figure's blurred face had unsettled everyone in the lab, but it was the eyes that refused to let go. In the photo, they were only faint ovals at first, dark pools beneath the brim of shadow. But when spectral scans isolated reflected light, something impossible appeared. The reflections weren't circular like a camera flash or the desert sun. They were elongated, vertical glints, as though light had bounced off a curved, glossy surface, unlike any human cornea. Under magnification, the eyes seemed too large for the head. Proportion charts put them at nearly double the ratio of a human adult, closer to what infants display. Except here, the skull was elongated, the jaw recessed, leaving the eyes as the dominant feature. Witnesses from Roswell had long spoken of big black eyes, but seeing them captured on emulsion felt different. Here was not memory, not testimony, but image. A cryptographer brought in for the debris symbols studied the reflections with equal intensity. He noted faint twin points within each eye, mirrored perfectly, like dual light sources. Yet in the photo's field, only one sun casts shadows. That means the reflection isn't from this environment, he muttered. It's internal, like a lens catching frequencies we can't see. The idea chilled the room. What if the eyes weren't just organs of sight, but instruments? What if the being had been recording, even as soldiers clustered around? The skeptics rebutted and said the proportions might be deformation with film grain, motion blur, or even double exposure. But such distortions tend to randomize, to smear darkness and softness. Then the eyes became sharper with enhancement, more symmetrical, more deliberate. And when overimposed upon the descriptions given by mortician Glenn Dennis, who swears he has been asked to provide child-sized coffins after the crash, were uncanny. For Claire, it was a more personal discovery. In his grandfather's warning letters, he never spoke of a fragment. It was always in that indefinite pattern. There are faces you shouldn't meet and eyes that don't let you go. At the time, it felt metaphorical. Now, staring at the digital enhancement, she realized he meant it literally. He had seen those eyes, and their memory was carried in silence for the rest of his life. Silence for the rest of his life. The cover-up echoes. The photo itself was a revelation. but the silence around it was just as telling. From the moment Claire's grandfather defied orders and slipped it into his personal effects, the weight of the Roswell cover-up seemed to bleed through every generation of her family. And when historians began cross-referencing the image with declassified documents, the same patterns of suppression appeared, echoing across 75 years. The first echo was in the missing records. When the General Accounting Office investigated Roswell in the 1990s, they discovered that every base file from January to October 1947 had been destroyed. No explanation, no authorization noted, no chain of accountability, gone. And now, here was a surviving photograph from that very window of time, carrying pencil marks that referenced saucer debris. It was as if someone inside the system had preserved one fragment before the erasure began. The second echo lay in testimony. Major Jesse Marcel swore that what he handled at Roswell was not of this earth. Decades later, his son remembered strange hieroglyphs on beams his father briefly brought home. In the newly discovered photo, those same markings were traced faintly along a shard of wreckage. How could witnesses across time describe details so precise if the debris was merely sticks and foil? The image seemed to confirm what human voices had been repeating for years, only to be dismissed as exaggeration. It has reverberated for the third time within the theater of denial. On July 8, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release that it had captured a flying disc. Just 24 hours later, that long-awaited story was changed to a stage photograph of Jesse Marcel holding some bits of the weather balloon. Compare that staged photo with Claire's print, and the difference is staggering. In one, debris looks flimsy, mundane, carefully arranged to downplay mystery. In the other, fragments gleam with properties no balloon could possess. But what really gets one palpitating is probably that most disconcerting echo coming from the handwritten note. Saucer debris, Ray AF, 1947. Had the cover-up been foolproof and every soldier strictly followed orders, this scrawl would have never been. Yet it was there, a whisper from the past opposing the script. Whoever wrote this letter knew absolutely that he could risk his career or worse to leave behind a trace. For Claire, these echoes gave different meanings to her grandfather's warning, burn it. Not just because of the photograph, but because of what it represented, a direct challenge to the machinery of silence. Having it meant holding evidence that generations of officials wanted to bury. In this way, the Roswell incident, thought by some to be only a myth, found its way to the surface once again, not through confessions or reports, but rather through the existence of one single image, hidden inside an attic trunk, a picture of a figure with non-human eyes, and a note that contradicted the official version.